Now, it has been reported that Mikel Arteta is upset about the makeup of the team. Now, today we're going to look at every single Arsenal player and if we should keep or sell them within the next 2 transfer windows in order to streamline the squad and make them better overall. Now, here we are. We have keep, sell and loan because I think some players should be loaned out and maybe shouldn't be sold for the future. And overall, we've got every single squad player this season or who is still on Arsenal's books who will come back on loan at the end of the year. Now, first of all, with the goalkeepers is probably the easiest one to go for. First, I've put Heinen, who's obviously on loan at Real Valladolid and is doing really well there. And Arsenal signed him to a new deal this summer, so I do think that he will be someone kept in the team. But I do think Arsenal will actually loan him out for another season. I think we'll probably try and buy a keeper in the summer if we've got funds available, of course. And he can get more experience at maybe another top 5 league, which could see him be the sub goalkeeper in the future. Could be an Emi Martinez sort of projection. Now, next, some of these are also going to be quite easy on the other way, and it's going to be David Raya, who of course we're going to put into the keep category. And I do want to have a quick word on David Raya because I do think obviously there's a lot of criticism when he first joined, but I actually think this season he's been one of our best players. I know in the last couple of weeks he's not necessarily been the best, but I thought against Chelsea he was top again. But I think overall you have an argument to be one of our better players in definitely the top 3. If you look at his stats, he's doing exactly what you want him to. He's getting 21 high claims this season, acting as sweeper a lot and getting 71 accurate long balls. At the end of the day, his distribution is key, his claiming from crosses has been key, and his player traits are insane in this corner, so he's definitely a player that we are grateful to have at the club. Next, Neto is obviously going to be a sell. Now, he is on loan, and what I mean by some of these players that you're going to see who are on loan at the club right now is that will we go and buy them in the future? And I don't think we should buy Neto, and I think that'd be quite clear. He's just a short-term option. Next is of course Ricardo Calafiori, who obviously is going to go into keep alongside Gabriel because obviously there are starters and they are key players within the team, and I can't see Arsenal being in a position where these two will ever have to leave the club anytime soon. Now, next is Jakub Kiwior, a very interesting person to talk about. That is basically because I think Kiwior has become somewhat of a punching bag between Arsenal fans because he doesn't play that much. He comes on and he doesn't necessarily look the best in a lot of games. I think against Man City, a lot of people blamed him when it weren't really his fault, and a lot of people blamed him for that Liverpool game where he did look a little bit mismanaged, although the defence overall with that back four was awful. And I think Kiwior is a top player. I really do think he brings a lot to a different team, maybe not us. I think on the ball he's good, but he gets a bit nervous sometimes. But in the games he has played centre back, which I think people forget he is a centre back, he has been probably one of Arsenal's best players. And I know we haven't been playing the top teams, we've been playing Bolton and Preston, but I do think he was really good in both of them. Obviously he got 2 assists against Preston, but a lot of people cared about. But against Bolton also, he's so calm, such good defensively, and was good in the one-on-one, and I do think that really does help him. And ultimately we spent 22 mil on him. I do think you can recuperate that. I still think he's got a high value in the Serie A specifically, and probably to lower Premier League teams. But with the amount of left backs that Arsenal have, and the fact we probably were going to sell Kiwior this summer if it wasn't for Tomiyasu's injury, means to me he probably should be sold. However, that could change depending on who else actually leaves in that position. And now, speaking of other left backs, there's obviously a lot to go through. We're obviously going to talk about Alexander Zinchenko. Now, yet again, a player that I would say a lot of fans don't really like. I think there's a lot of questions if he really understands what it means to be for us, because he kind of has a lot of Man City connections, which ultimately may not matter to some people but may matter to some others. And I also think sometimes his performances get a little bit overrated or a little bit underrated. I do think he's a player that's in between what a lot of people think. Ultimately, there's no discouraging and discrediting Zinchenko's on the ball quality and what he offered for the team for a very long time, and even now in games where Arsenal can dominate the ball. However, defensively he is a weakness, and we're signing players that are better defensively to try and hold that. And I think the main problem for Zinchenko is that he is kind of getting phased out of the team for a younger Miles Lewis-Skelly. Now, in my opinion, Zinchenko has to be sold. I think actually more than probably Kiwior. I actually think that he's a player that you can get good value of. He is a very specific role though, so it may be hard to find a buyer because it may be quite specific, but he's got to kind of leave. He's not really getting played. He's on a lot of wages, and if you're earning that much and you're not good enough to play or not trusted to play, then I think it is time to leave. Now, Next, we are going to quickly talk about Miles Lewis-Skelly. Now, I think it's quite obvious that Miles Lewis-Skelly is a keep. I don't think he should be loaned out. I think he actually will replace Zinchenko, and I think we've kind of started to see that in certain games. Obviously, there's a lot to improve because he's so young, but I love how he uses his body in very good ways to keep the ball. He seems a lot more physically strong than Zinchenko, a lot more hard-hitted. He is a defensive midfielder more than an attacking one like Zinchenko was. And I think there's high potential with this guy, and I think Arteta really sees that. So I think he really will be one of the players that we project in the squad more and more over the years. And he's so young, it doesn't really matter how much he plays right now. Next is obviously Jurrien Timber. Don't have to go through this one that much. It's obviously a keep. Jurrien Timber is a key player for us, and I think if he didn't get that ACL injury last year, who knows what could have happened. I think he is a real star, and he's still playing off of that injury and putting a shift in every day. Next is Tomiyasu. Now, Tomiyasu is a player that I have loved at the club. He's one of my favourite players. I think he is one of the small signings that you make where everyone was criticising it when he joined. Not necessarily Arsenal fans in this case, but it was mostly the media. Everyone saying that he got thrown out to us, and he's been absolutely amazing. Of course, there was mistakes in the first year, but every year he's got better. And the fact he is so versatile is such a key thing. Yet again, another centre-back brought in, played on the right, which makes sense. He is right-footed, but then the fact he could also play on the left and invert, and he's very comfortable there, shows the quality that he actually has overall. Now, the problem is, of course, the injury record. He was never really that serious injured, as you could see before he came to Arsenal, but it's just been a problem the whole time. He's missed so many days with injuries. He's currently out for 115 days as the time. He's missed 17 games in a row. And I think with him as well, his injuries kind of come down really smallly. Like, no one really says anything, and then in training he's picked up another 3-month injury. We don't see him, and then he goes and plays for Japan. Now, he is rumoured to be back soon, maybe potentially after this international break, so if he can get that back, maybe he could still be a very good player, because every time he plays he's absolutely fine. But when Arsenal need him the most, he isn't there, and we've had to rely on other players who aren't great in different roles. Overall, I think Tomiyasu, if he can stay fit to the end of the year, will be kept at the team. However, he is another player that we have to seriously consider selling, and I think I would put him in the sell category just for that alone. And I think there's a lot of teams that will see quite a lot of value or risk in him, who are a lot smaller than us, that will understand that he might get injured, but it's worth putting him in. Now, the thing is here, I've put nearly 3 left backs in the sell category, and I don't think all of them will be sold, but I have an argument for all of them to be individually sold. I think overall at least one of them will stay. I can't see us selling all 3, and I think potentially that's most likely going to be Zinchenko, just because of how many people get him, or maybe Tomiyasu. I think Kivior probably will go, but overall I would be happy with any of them going, even all of them going, and maybe being another left back in, even though we need to stop buying defenders, because it gives chance to Miles Lewis-Skelly to also grow into that role. Now, next is obviously William Saliba. That's a keep. We should never let this guy leave, even if it's for 400 mil. And next we are moving on to the midfield. Now, there's a lot of players in here which is probably going to be very controversial for a lot of people. Now, first, I think it's definitely someone up in the air is Fabio Vieira. Now, Fabio Vieira is probably the big mark on Edu's reign. I think he was a player that we spent a lot of money on, expected a lot of things, but we also bought him a year earlier than he was actually good at, because we wanted to get him in early. Now, I don't really have issues with Fabio Vieira. I think he is a great player and actually can help Arsenal a lot in the future. I just don't think he's really been given the time, and I don't think we as a club can give him that time. We can't really risk not playing Odegaard. Obviously, you've got to say he's a bit unlucky him leaving this summer, making the good decision to actually go and play some minutes, and then Odegaard gets injured. He probably would have played, but that's how it is. And at Porto, he's not done the best. He's got 1 assist so far this season. He was injured at the start of the year. He's only just come into the team, and he's been relatively okay. You can still see he's getting his fitness up. He's actually played him right wing in every game for them, which is interesting because it's something he couldn't do for us at all when we tried to put him there. So with that being said, maybe if you could maybe develop him into that right wing role, but I still think Arsenal should probably just go and buy another winger. But it depends. I think is a player that you could still risk on or give up on your losses. It kind of depends how much money we can get for him and what can happen. Now, overall, what I would say, because it's a very interesting situation, is probably to loan him out again, maybe. It depends how this loan with Porto goes, I think, and then we can kind of see. But maybe it's too early to maybe get a transfer out. I don't really know what to do with Fabio Vieira, and he's someone I'm kind of like up in the air with. I think we could do anything with him. Next is Jorginho, who obviously his contract is ending, so he will be sold. Still think he's been a brilliant servant of the club, and I think every time he plays, he's absolutely fine. So I have no issue with Jorginho. I think he's been great. Next is obviously Marino, another one just signed. Is there a point of talking about him? He's just signed. We're going to keep him. Same with Declan Rice, £105 million we spent on him. I don't think he's ever going to be allowed to leave the club for that sort of money. And I also think with Declan Rice, there's been a lot of things up in the air. I think this season overall, it's been quite clear that 8 role has not been the best for him and he's really been poor in it. But in that 6 role, the game he played against Liverpool, I think he was better than anyone else has played in our role for us this season. And that game individually, for me, showed he has to be the 6 going forward, even though I had that opinion anyway. So he's obviously going to be in keep. Now, next, we're going to get into the player that everyone hates me talking about because I talk about him a lot. It's Thomas Partey. Now, I mean, I've made my opinions quite clear on Partey over the years. I do not like him. I think, of course, there's all that noise in the air that goes behind him, which I definitely have to look at and consider when I think about the player playing for our club. And this season, I've praised him because I thought he has been very good in games he has played, which I think is fair. But to say he's better than Rice, which is clearly not true, and to say he's been an amazing servant of the club, I think is also not great. He's been good for us for about 8 to 10 months, but we spent £50 million on him and he's in his 30s now. I don't really think it has been worth it considering how much we needed a midfielder of his quality, and he hasn't proved it enough because he's been injured too much and everything's always going on with it. Now, I know a lot of people aren't going to like that, but that is what it is. To me, Partey still has to be sold. I thought he should have been sold in the summer. Obviously, we couldn't get a deal, I guess, for him. Even not looking at anything else, his age, he's in his 30s. We just have to sell players at that age. His physicality has dropped overall, even though it has showed a little bit of progress, but his pace, more importantly, has definitely dipped. And it's fine having someone like Jorginho there who we bought on a cheap, who's on small wages, but having Partey on big wages there who's doing the same thing doesn't really make sense. And with the news that Arsenal want to continue to buy another 6 in the summer, I think it's quite clear that Partey should be moved on for the sake of his career as well. Next is Martin Odegaard, of course, is a keep, and I do think the whole noise about Odegaard is funny as well, because certain people on Twitter have the opinion that Odegaard makes Arsenal worse or we can't rely on him, and I do think Arsenal this season have proven that we kind of actually need him. I think our tactics against Chelsea look way better with him, much more balanced. Now, I have said, and I will stand by, that I want Odegaard to do different movements to help Saka, but it's not really the deepest thing in the team because Saka is so good individually that it's fine. I'd rather Arsenal work as a complete unit, and maybe Saka's not playing at his best, than us give Saka everything he needs and the rest of the team just suffer. Obviously, I don't want that to happen. Odegaard is one of the key players for this team. Not only is he a captain and leader, which I value quite a lot in players, I don't think he is replaceable within the team. Maybe if you were Neri, give him 6-7 months and he could replace that, or maybe Fabio Vieira could come back and show it, but I don't really think so. So I think Odegaard for me is probably going to be the captain for a long time coming. Next is my favourite player, Havertz. So obviously it's a keep, and I think Havertz this season has been suffered by the system with Odegaard not being there, and I expect him to get back to his best now. I still think he's been trying his hardest every game and working really hard, which we will always credit, so I will put Havertz in keep, one of our better players, of course. Same with Saka. Obviously, I'm not even going to go through him, what's the point? Next is Martinelli. Now, Martinelli, in my opinion, should not be sold at any cost, and this is because he's youngster. He came through the academy, obviously buying him from Brazil at a young age, and I also just think that Martinelli is someone that we really want to epitomise in the squad and get better. I also think Martinelli doesn't seem like a player that really cares too much about maybe playing in another club. I think he loves Arsenal so much that he would happily play a little bit less minutes and improve himself than rather think he needs to get into the squad. But I do think Arsenal need to upgrade their left-hand side. It's the reason why I made this video, because Arteta came out and said he's not happy specifically with some of his midfielders, but it's more his left-hand side. He isn't happy with the wingers that he has at his disposal, not believing that Sterling, Trossard or Martinelli are really giving him what he wants every week. And it is hard because you're always compared to Saka on the other side, who is one of the best players in the world, which they're never going to get to that level. But I do think, yeah, there's also been that problem there. This season, Martinelli, in my opinion, has been a little better. He's doing some good successful dribbles. He's actually having touches in the opposition box, which we finally want him to, which he's been struggling last season to get. And overall, some of his stats are decent. He is getting better. At least he has scored a few goals. However, my opinion is that Arsenal should look to buy another left winger in the summer. I think it's one of the key players and positions that we need to get in, and I think there's good players out in Europe that we can. So I do think Martinelli should stay, but I don't think he should be a starter currently going forward into next season. Next is Reece Nelson, a player that I think is very underrated. I think he is good, but I don't know if he's Arsenal quality. He's been really good at Fulham out on loan, but I don't really think we should be loaning him out yet. Again, he's quite older than some of the youngsters we've had, like 23, 24, and I think with Smith Rowe leaving, with Eddie leaving, Nelson's the next one in that line to leave. I think we yet again, there is better backups in right wing, I think, than probably him, but it's not even that. It's just his injury record is really poor, so I think to me it's probably a sell, but we could maybe loan him again. I don't really think he's got a place in the squad in my opinion. Next is Raheem Sterling, which may seem weird putting him in this category because he obviously is on a loan, but I thought maybe that Arsenal fans could potentially see us the future of us buying him. I kind of sat on the point where I didn't want Arsenal to buy him no matter what. Like, even if he scored 50 goals this season, I just think at his age, at 30, his wages that he's on that we're going to have to pay in the future, it's not really worth Arsenal investing in. And I think, yeah, again, there's better wingers out there, young in improvement, that we can get in to improve the squad. So to me, it's a guaranteed sell or just not buy. Well, next I'm going to put Waneri in keep, because obviously we all know Waneri is going to stay and is going to be a future player. I don't even think he'll be loaned out at any point. And next we get into the two players that I left last, because I do think yet again there's a lot of things up in the air if we should sell them, if we should sign them or what. Now first is Gabriel Jesus. Now Gabriel Jesus is a certainly weird player, because I've been someone that's been quite critical of him ever since he joined Arsenal after he got injured, because I think he's been poor since then. But I do see the adaptation of him being very good in the team. He is a high dribbler, he is really good at holding up the play, and I've been someone that has said that he should have played over Trossard for a while, just because I think that role is better for him. However, financially, is it worth to keep him? He's the third highest earner at the club, technically second because Sterling were not paying them wages, behind Havertz. And you look at all the other players that are in the high wages. Partey playing a lot, Odegaard playing a lot, Saka playing a lot, Rice playing a lot, Havertz playing a lot. Like, is he deserving to be in that company when he's not playing at all? And I just don't really think so. Now the thing is with him, as I do think he is probably one of our best backups in right wing, but I do think his finishing and his end product has been so poor that maybe it's a confidence thing and it could get better, but it is in his whole career. He's always underperformed XG throughout it. But that's not really the issue I have too much. If he was doing good work outside the play and helping us a lot more, I'd be impressed. But I think in some games this season he's looked quite poor in. He did look good against the Preston game, and I think he'll probably get the Crystal Palace game if he's fit in the cup. So we'll see how he does in them. And you never know, he could become a real vital option for us in the future that we could end up keeping him. And I also think it is hard to necessarily get rid of him, not only because of his wages, but he is also our only backup striker. If we were to say someone like Sesko in or someone else, then who are we going to play on the wing as our backup there? Is Nelson going to come back? I can't see us selling all these players and it being financially possible to do it. Jesus is a player that you kind of touch and go. You see what happens. If you can get a good offer for him, I think you sell him. If he doesn't do anything for the next 6 months, the rest of the season, then I do think you sell him as well. But if he becomes a useful player in the next 6 to 7 months, he's not a player I'd be rushing to get rid of, because I still think there is a little bit of potential there, which could definitely be seen as good. Now lastly is Leandro Trossard. Now the reason why I left him to last is because he's actually been in the news a lot recently, with Arsenal apparently in contract talks with him because there's more Saudi teams that want him. Of course, we had that 30 mil Saudi bid after our transfer window closed a few months ago. At the time I said Arsenal should not sell Trossard, and I still think at the time we shouldn't, because obviously we couldn't buy a replacement in. But I think as time has gone on this season, I think a lot of people have been very frustrated with him. Now, that doesn't take away from anything on how good Trossard has been in the 27 mil we spent, but it's quite clear he is just a guy that you can put in the box to score chances. Anything out of that, it's kind of out of his realm. Now, I have no issue with that, because I think Arsenal historically, at least in the last decade or 15 years, the squad players have been quite poor. I think with Trossard, at least he brings some sort of quality, in Jorginho and these players that we haven't really seen before, that do make us a title contender. And he is also very versatile. I know he's not the best in a lot of these positions, which is definitely fair enough, but he is 29 years old, turning 30 in just a month's time. So is it worth to continue to give him a new contract? I kind of sit on the Wenger system, where it's like if they're over 30, give them reduced contracts, because I do think it roils down, but it depends what sort of player they are. Some players are still good well into their 30s. Overall, he's a player that if you get good money for, I think you get rid of. I don't think you sign him a new deal, but maybe that new deal is to kind of give us more money in contract negotiations, a bit of leeway, which I definitely can see going on. And yet again, it's another player that, like, if we sell all the players that I've put on here to sell, then we can't really afford to sell Trossard as well, because we're not going to sell 10 players and buy 15 players in one summer. Most likely is we'll sell 3 or 4 main squad players, and then we'll probably buy 3 or 4 main players that will improve hopefully that team. So thinking about that, I would probably still keep Trossard. I know that might be a bit controversial right now, but I do think he should be a bench player. Now, he can be frustrated with that all he wants, but I don't think he's getting a club that are big as us anymore, so he kind of has to put up with it. I still think he's a very good player to have and can be a good asset as well for the team. Now, overall, let me know in the comments what you would do differently. I know some of these are going to be quite controversial, and like I said, I don't expect us to sell all these players. I just have reasons that I think we could sell each one. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.